Hello everyone. Today we have with us Adyasha Nayak. She is a researcher with the Wildlife Institute of India in Kaziranga National Park. She worked towards bridging the gap between local communities and conservation through ecotourism. She also worked with local communities to engage them with the park management for crafting sustainable, low cost solutions to mitigate human wildlife conflict. Beyond data collection, Adyasha has played a pivotal role in writing successful grant proposals, catalyzing the establishment of village based ecotourism ventures, and facilitating partnerships between women's self help groups and e commerce platforms to promote traditional crafts. As a liaison between community groups and government agencies, she orchestrated livelihood training and workshops, honing interpersonal and facilitation skills. These experiences laid the groundwork for her vision of collaborative management, where conservation and community thrive hand in hand. Adesha works with the University of Montana as a researcher in Glacier National Park, where she conducted trail monitoring activities over the summer with the goal of visitor user management. Her primary responsibility included the execution, data collection, and data analysis of a GPS based study of visitor use patterns. These studies together are part of the annual monitoring by the park for visitor management. Over the next year, she will be working on planning and executing her dissertation research. So, Adesha aims at mitigating the conservation issues by incorporating results obtained from scientific studies along with community participation in action. Wow, that's a lot to read, Adesha. So I should have asked you simply tell us about yourself rather than narrating the entire story. But it's really good to see that you have been working in these various diverse sectors. So I welcome you on this platform called People of Nature. Adesha.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you for having me. And I know it's a lot, and I've made quite the change sometimes in my life where I have decided that a particular kind of work that I do doesn't
Mhm.
feel as intrinsic to me. So that is the reason why my CV has so many different experiences because I've always been the person who does want to try out a couple of different things and see which what uh, stays with them the most. And I think the reason I stayed within this space of community and conservation is because out of all the things I tried my hand at, I felt that this is the place where I can make the most impact.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how true that is necessarily on the ground, but at least I've tried to make that impact.
Mhm. Actually, that's where I was coming to. It's such a diverse background that you have, and I think right after your master's degree you jumped into working on socio-environmental projects. So was there any spark, or was there something that you thought that this is something that you want to explore?
Um, yeah, I actually necessarily didn't want to explore that because when I started the job with Wildlife Institute of India, which I'm really thankful for, although my affiliation with them ended before, I mean, at a time where I necessarily didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
um, possibly ended, but I was at a phase of my professional life where it seemed like the right decision to move away from there. But I learned a lot, and when it came about, I was really excited to work in Kaziranga, and it's been a dream landscape for me when it comes to working. And I know every researcher probably feels the same way. They want to be out in the Northeast at least once in their life,
Yeah.
and so that was the draw that I went in with. I
Mm-hmm.
honestly didn't have a lot of experience working with communities at the time, but
Mm-hmm.
staying there and working there actually helped me a lot, and I was able to work with other people. I was able to gain so
Mm-hmm.
much of I wouldn't call it insight, but yeah, there are tiny things that I had not experienced and
Mm-hmm.
had not realized about fieldwork that working there and working with communities kind of helped me. And I have to say that being in Kaziranga and working in that landscape kind of pushed me towards this idea that I want to stay in this um, space. I want to stay in this part of conservation, and I want to help make conservation a better tool than it is now. And I know probably people don't share the same outlook as me, but I do feel like we can make so many improvements, and uh, this is where I feel like my skills are most useful. Um, yeah,
Interesting. So the Kaziranga landscape that you have been talking about, I guess
yeah.
the human wildlife conflict, I guess is pretty prominent in parts of this landscape. It's pretty complex, multifaceted issue that we all know of. The media would, show one narrative, but do you think that there is a story behind it? How was your experience working on it?
Yeah, definitely. The way we see human wildlife conflict as I don't know, as people who have lived in cities or as people who live in cities, the way we see it, honestly, when I did go in with the idea that okay, if I just tell people about human wildlife conflict, they would probably support us, or sometimes I would be apprehensive thinking that maybe people are not open to solutions.
Mm-hmm.
But that was very that was a very wrong assumption. And something I realize is, particularly in rural areas, these communities that have been living alongside animals like the rhino and the elephant, which are
Mm-hmm.
also culturally important for them, they develop a kind of a very unique relationship with the animal where conflict is painful. It causes them economic stress, it causes them financial stress, it causes them
Yeah.
psychological stress. But in the end, um, it's um, it's not treated as something that the animal does it maliciously. I think there is a recognition that the animal is forced to come into the human space because it has something that it needs that it's not getting
Mhm.
in its own home.
Mhm.
And I think the that's the crux of how what I mean basically why human wildlife conflict exists, but just the understanding that people would have,
Yeah.
and there is a certain level of empathy towards animals
Mhm.
without necessarily giving them anthropomorphic or human characteristics. So there is a simultaneous recognition of these creatures being wild, but them
Mhm.
also being significant, and them also being wonderful creatures that need to be preserved. And
Yeah.
I think it's really easy to assume that people who face conflict each day probably hate the animal, but um, at least anecdotally, we weren't able to like feel that vitriol, feel that
Mhm.
disgust, but we were able to feel was, yeah, like I was saying, empathy and recognition of an animal's struggle itself. And this
Mhm.
idea that it's people and animal both struggling in a landscape together.
Mhm.
And that was eye opening for me because it also got me thinking about conflict and conservation in a way that I had not imagined thinking about, and which also kind of forces your hand to think about solutions in different ways.
Yeah, I think that's really fantastic that you are narrating this entire story of how people live in, at the edges of these parks with the wildlife. I guess we urban dwellers, even if we see a house gecko, we get scared, and perhaps that's a human wildlife conflict for us. But at the end, we live with that house gecko, irrespective of whether it's scary or not. I guess that's where all these small seeds of coexistence would be sown, with our society. Well, talking about that, uh, we know that you had attended this convention on the conservation of migratory species of wild animals as an observer recently. So, what were the insights you gained from this conference on conservation decision making?
Yeah, that was very eye opening for me. Also because I attended it as um like years ago as a beginner in conservation who's still
Mhm,
uh trying to learn how to do conservation on ground and how things on ground work. And it was very eye opening because it it allowed me to see how the decision making happens in so many different levels and so many different ways. Because there's usually working groups going on that are making kind of the more nitty gritty detailed decisions, and then you have bigger decisions. And it's not just that, but the amount of conservation decisions that can be made when leaders and experts from different countries are just having a meal together or just having tea together, and the kind of information exchange that can happen in those stages,
mhm,
and the kind of ideas that people can share with each other. And I had never really, I had always thought that probably decision making is simpler
mhm.
uh, in terms of
Really?
when it comes to things like wildlife and conservation and nature, because of course
Mhm,
we are going to face things immediately, and I would assume that decisions around maybe a species dying would be very much straightforward, but everything has um, this structure to it, which I do appreciate. I appreciate a lot because it makes sure that the science stays
mhm,
uh, relatable and the science stays relevant. But
mhm.
there is also like an element of bureaucracy that comes into planning and execution,
Yeah.
and having to deal with the background of logistics, which does make me nervous, because I'm also kind of closing to leading my own research and just having to having to just file
Mhm.
monthly reports makes me very, very nervous. So realizing that there is like a whole set of structure that acts to make sure conservation happens on ground, but a structure that's not separate from other structures. So of course it has
Mhm.
influences coming from different directions. But
Yeah.
in between all of that, everyone who works on field, everyone who works as an expert are just trying their best
Mhm,
to not to not have the any negative impact of it show up, to have everything be smooth, and that's very, very commendable. And
mhm,
honestly, I mean, looking at other experts sometimes um, feels inspiring as well, to see that people still are able to care and do things, and if other people can do that, then maybe there's still hope.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a very lot of feelings from my side with
That's okay. That's what I wanted to hear. So, coming back to protected area, the Kaziranga, definitely,
yeah.
and you also worked on the ecotourism initiatives, at Kaziranga. So, I guess ecotourism is, I don't know. I mean, is it really hyped? Do you think that the ecotourism initiatives work, or they just empower the local corporates? Do they empower local communities, or do they empower private companies which are into ecotourism? What is your experience?
Um. Yeah. I have also been having a lot of debate around this here as well, because I mean, this is surprising. Even the Western countries have started to think about the efficacy of ecotourism,
mhm,
which which makes sense because we are thinking about what it means overall for sustainability and all of that. But if I
mhm,
think about like ecotourism working, then yeah, it's a ecotourism is a tool, and it all matters on how we use the tool,
mhm,
who's getting to use it, and I think one important aspect of that, in my limited experience, could be on who gets to be involved in the
mhm.
planning and the execution of that. Because what
Correct.
we did find was, yeah, local communities often may not have the um, means to, write a grant or be able
Mhm,
to uh, apply for funding. And those are the kind of areas where they are very limited. And that's where if as an external person, if we are thinking about helping them, that's kind of where they need that help. But when it comes to things about what goes into an ecotourism, what works, what doesn't work, I think there's always needs to have the community input, and
yeah,
there's always risk attached because no ecotourism is can be started without any kind of outside capital, and it all matters on where that capital comes from.
yeah,
Um, so I do believe that it's it totally depends. Also depends a lot on the facilitator and what their outlook is.
mhm,
And for example, I didn't get to um, stay longer and work for a longer period of time with the ecotourism
mhm,
group because of these kind of changes. But I think these are also effective. They do need someone to be there for the first couple of years to help them
yeah,
through. And I think it all like it's a combination of who gets to be involved and who's the actual facilitator and where does the money come from. And it can be empowering, it can be useful.
mhm,
But I do think that right now, because it's a buzzword, and it's a really, really profitable buzzword,
yes,
that I mean, there are private companies which actually do bring in benefits and have good impact, but definitely there's always a risk of someone capitalizing and monopolizing on
mhm,
that just for the profitable name. Um, and I think there are definitely safeguards against it, but again, these are not, um, and in my opinion, these are not very general
yeah,
safeguards. This has to be something that's very specific to addressing the issues of the community. And I think working long term is useful. Um, yeah, and with uh, with ecotourism, again, it's not a cure all fix for everything. So I think
mhm,
we should also acknowledge that just bringing in ecotourism somewhere probably is not going to solve all their problems.
true,
And there's usually, if there are issues with ecotourism, then that's because there are underlying issues that were not addressed when
mhm,
those started. So with a little bit of proper, with slightly better planning, I think there are pitfalls that we can avoid.
yeah,
But I'm not 100% fan of the idea of ecotourism. I have never been, but I've also grown to realize its potential for
mhm,
helping out communities and the big change it can bring into a community makes them that empowers them, that makes them more open to supporting conservation. And at times, even if we feel like we don't want
Mm-hmm.
ecotourism in a place, we might need to take the help that it provides and bring it in just because I mean, in terms of the financial context, it works really well. So
Mm.
the social aspects of it are what needs working in a place.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that it's not something that blankly can be applied to each and every part of the country, the protected areas. Yeah, I mean, we need to be really careful with ecotourism framework. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and we need to learn our lessons from it, isn't it? So, Adesha, I'm going to ask you a slightly personal question. I hope this is okay with you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay. So, as someone outside the binary gender dichotomy, how has the reception been from your Indian and American colleagues to it? And if do you think that there are differences and how it is viewed in the USA and India?
Yeah, there's definitely differences. I definitely um am not very open about it when I'm in India.
Uh-huh.
But I am sort of open about it, and it's also because uh I mean, definitely the attitude towards LGBTQ plus people is definitely more favorable in the US. Not in the whole of the country, but luckily in the parts I live.
Okay.
Uh, but the kind of the differences I face here is, I think my experience has been different because there are obviously different cultural
Mhm.
expectations out of men and women.
Right.
And even in India, because I lived in different parts of the country, and whichever part I went to had very different cultural outlook on men and women. There is a general uh, framework, but
Yeah.
definitely each state has its own kind of set of
Mm-hmm.
rules that it follows. Um, and I have always been happy to abide by most of those rules.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I do like blending in, um, but the reception around it, um, and this is not a criticism of any particular culture, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely the US is more open on certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that there is less levels of adjustments that might be needed, um, and uh, I would say maybe less number of questions from
Mm-hmm.
others when it comes to that. But overall, overall, I think it's um, it's not really that different. Um, and the broader society in both countries is still
Mm-hmm.
not very tuned into different kinds of identities. We still kind of operate on a binary.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like, understanding that US doesn't understand anything more than India does. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that would be very easy to say that no, neither of the society is better than the other. There are great, there are people both places that do understand it. There are people both places that don't, that are trying to. But I guess um, it's about how it feels in context of everything else. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I am trying to be articulate about it, but it is something that I can't put into words.
No, no, that answers my question. Actually, I wanted to just ask that how you feel being in India and being in America, and if there is a stark difference, and what you're saying, it's pretty individual basis. It's not like a country as a whole, but it's like individual to individual. It varies. So
Yeah.
my next question is like a follow up question. which is about the various gender specific challenges faced by people working in wildlife conservation. Okay, I'm specifically asking you about people working in the field, not at desk. Okay.
Yeah.
um, do you do you have any story that you want to share here with your audience? Any specific challenge you faced working in the field?
Um, and no, no, and this is very antithesis to my general outlook that yeah, overall, it still needs to improve, specifically
Mhm.
for women and female presenting folks, because
Yeah.
I did I from whatever fieldwork I have done, whatever travels I have done, there's still always an issue of safety,
Mhm.
and obviously it does intersect with field work, because
Yeah.
people have to travel to remote locations, and not being able to do that at times at night, or I guess not being able to travel as freely as male colleagues is definitely a limitation. And this idea of female students having to be dependent on a team, um,
Mhm.
but saying that, I have personally not had any negative experience, because of, I mean, uh, working in field, not from my colleagues, not from the communities I work with. And I have to say that, yeah, the communities that I work with, they do bring up things that I'm not comfortable with. But what what they say is out of concern. I'll share a very tiny
Mhm.
anecdote. Me and the field assistant showed up to
Mhm.
a particular village elder's house for an
Mhm.
interview. So we sat down, and you know, it's kind of getting towards the afternoon. So uh, he offered us rice beer, and we had to explain it to him that we are
Mhm.
working, so we can't drink rice beer from people we are interviewing. So he's like, okay, we'll settle with chai, and we get chai. And him and his family were very, very amazed that my parents are letting me uh,
Mhm.
stay so far away from home, and that I'm working, and that they are not worried about me. And they
Mhm.
were fairly very surprised that how am I not married? What does my husband think about me working so far away? And I think, um, and it's very easy to interpret that as something sexist. Uh,
Yeah.
but with, but I have lived with enough people to recognize that it's not sexist. It's just it's their worldview, and they are genuinely concerned about me. Like, as um, and after a period of working, they think of me as their daughter. So
Yeah.
I have had very positive experiences from my the field staff I have interacted with. They have always been the kindest, the most nicest field staff. They have always been men that I have trusted completely. All my
Mhm.
colleagues have been amazing. So I don't have a negative story, but I do have to say that all my negative experiences working in field have come out when I'm traveling and I'm interacting with the general public,
Oh.
and just the not sometimes in buses, having to watch out for safety, or having to find a single seat, things like that.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
even in that case, I did run into an occasional issue, and then people who are around me would actually come in to help me out,
Mhm.
and because they would see a woman in distress, and they would run to
Yeah.
help me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even then, there's always help. I mean, my experiences are not universal, but I do think that um, there's the safety issues, but there's also people out there who would actually genuinely help you. And it's about like identifying those. And
Yeah.
I do want to say something controversial is we often go into people who work in the field
Mhm.
when they start working in the field, they
Yeah.
often go with their cultural ideas in their mind, but
Yeah.
we must let that go.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, and this is that comes out of experience. I think working in the field for some considerable amount of time opens up our mind to accepting
Mm-hmm.
other people's ideas. So I think
Yeah.
anyone who has been out there, like I'm talking about colleagues, are definitely um,
Mm-hmm.
not people who would engage in anything that makes their colleagues unsafe. Having said that, I know um, there would be there would be there probably, if there are instances, then this is
Mm-hmm.
not to discount anyone else's feeling,
Mm-hmm.
but this is just what my own experience has been.
Great. So, I mean, it's fantastic that you worked with a really nice team, a professional team, I would say, and you never had a like a major negative experience working in the field. I guess that is a story. That is a big story. I would rather say we keep on hearing so many negative stories, but rarely we get to hear a positive story. So actually, thanks a lot, Adyasha, for sharing it with us. Let
Yes.
me ask you last just couple of questions, and we
Yeah.
are going to wrap up this interview. So you are currently working with University of Montana in USA. Um, so what are your preliminary observations? What kind of work are you doing, and what it is like, how it is culminating and all?
Are you asking specifically about the work,
Yeah.
or yeah? So right now, like I said, uh, I'm working on crafting my own research, my
Mm-hmm.
dissertation research,
Yeah.
and at the same time, I'm working with a university on. So I work for one season in Glacier,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the university has different visitor use monitoring projects that are basically in collaboration with either the Forest Service or the Park Service. So
Mm-hmm.
these are essentially Forest Service and Park Service projects that they hire the university to do, and I've been involved in. I'm involved in a different project now. It's
Mm-hmm.
um, right now basically we're combing through data
Okay.
that we collected over the season, and when it comes to, um, I guess yeah, I'm at a stage right now about my project that I don't even know how much is relevant, because I'm pretty much at a very nascent stage. I'm still working on my uh, like crafting
Mm-hmm.
my proposal to go into a review. But um, yeah, I guess, are you if you're asking about like the kind of work, then
Mm-hmm.
I think I am really interested in um, adaptive and collaborative management side of it,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and specifically around indigenous communities. But yeah, overall in protected area management, and being in UM has been helpful because they they are UM is proponent of a management framework and has experts in the management framework and experts in the theories and the theoretical background that I'm interested in. So I've been able to kind of see how things work um,
Mm-hmm.
in on ground, and being able to work with the federal staff, whether it's the park or the forestry staff, has also been pretty useful because it lets you see that the um, working of management is not very different depending on the country. It's pretty much how management works is same. So
Mhm.
it's really useful in uh, basically understanding that there are some key issues that make management difficult, and if we could uh, make sure that those uh, don't pop up every once in a while. I think we are um, management from the manager's perspective is more about like managing for those disturbances, and I think overall it is what it is. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question or if that's what you were
Yeah,
aiming.
that answers
Okay,
partly,
okay.
but I got the message. So I'm coming to my last question, and this might sound really bizarre to you. What is your dream, Adesha? It's alright if it's random and alien.
Oh no, yeah.
You
My I
want to say
I
something.
dream big. I
I
I
want to
dream.
hear that. What is your dream? Big dream.
Yes, I dream big. And honestly, at this point, I'm not ashamed to say that
Mhm.
I want to be able to live in one place, have a stable home, and uh, have a more peaceful
Mhm.
life. If I could live in a village and farm and just live like that, not having to be in a city, I would do that. But I'm slowly recognizing that that is probably not possible um, with that. But yeah, my dream is to make a difference. I guess that's why we are all doing what
Yeah.
we are. Yeah, it's a more. I think trying to make a difference is one of those dreams that um, I that one lists out in their school yearbook. But r- practical dream is to have a stable life, uh, which uh, with so much happening in the world, yeah, it
Mhm.
does feel like a dream.
That's a beautiful dream. I wish that dream comes true.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
very
I wish too.
great. Adyasha, it was nice talking to you. Um, as we are concluding, I would just like to ask you if you want to share any message for the youth in conservation.
Oh, yeah, it. I don't know. I mean, you might have, you have definitely have more insight than I do, but it's tough. Trying to do academics is tough. Trying to do anything in conservation is tough. But
Mhm.
I guess, and this is also an advice, is um, if you, if someone is in it and if they feel that it doesn't work for them,
Mhm.
then I think they should also be free to walk away because conservation definitely needs people to be able to see the big picture.
Mhm.
And I think that, like, kind of an overall goal that we are working towards, if that makes sense, with each and every state. And I would tell someone that if you feel that that goal is not very clear to you, then feel
Yeah.
free to change the goal, and I or feel free to move to a place which has clarity. And I think sticking with conservation because it feels noble is
Mhm.
not a good idea. It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help the person because you are miserable doing something you don't want to do, and it doesn't help conservation because your heart's not in it. So yeah, and I like, feel free. I mean, all I'm saying is, corporate jobs are not always bad. There's
Oh,
benefit to everything, but the work we do is it's amazing.
that's fantastic.
Definitely, yeah, it's way more life fulfilling. But yeah,
Yeah. Great, Adesha. So it was nice talking to you. We had a really good conversation, I guess. I hope you also enjoyed it as much as I do. So thanks a lot, Adesha, for being a part of People of Nature.
thank you for inviting me. It's been amazing.
Thanks, Adesha. We will perhaps meet up sometime.
Yes, thank you.